Welcome back, gang. It's 2025, and that means there will be new MMORPGs on the horizon, but what's currently trending? If you're one of those players that love role-playing games, but you want to do it with friends over the course of years and years and years, then here's my opinion on the top 10 current MMORPGs on the market. In this video, I'm going to break down the pros and cons, unique selling points, population, and future of the best MMORPGs in gaming today. Timestamps are below if you wish to skip ahead, and do me a big favor, hit that thumbs up. Now, the top 10, I'm going to be a bit biased here. With number 10, my first game, I created content for on this YouTube channel over 10 years ago. Star Wars: The Old Republic is an MMORPG for PC only, taking place thousands of years before the film's events. This is what makes the game totally awesome and unique in the Star Wars universe, is that unlike the movies, there are a ton of Sith and Jedi fighting out huge sprawling battles on land, air, and space. Released on December 20th, 2011, it was developed by BioWare and published by Electronic Arts and had a rocky start. However, in 2023, the game moved developers from BioWare to Broadsword Online Games, which saw a boon in content and a revitalization in the game's future. The game features two factions, Galactic Republic and the Sith Empire. What makes SWTOR stand out is the story-driven gameplay. It's very solo-friendly. Players can get fully immersed in the detailed, fully voice-acted quests with tons of cinematics, and you can make a lot of choices, is what I like. Basically, old school BioWare Mass Effect Dragon Age, but yet in an MMO with a Star Wars skin. The game features a variety of classes and playstyles, allowing you to engage in this light versus dark side decisions. And true to BioWare games, it does influence the overall narrative, especially with the companions. They are actually unique and very interesting in an MMO. And there's a lot of PvP in this game as well. So you have Galactic Starfighter, which isn't that populated, but you have war zones, and then you have a ranked competitive combat with cool rewards. So there is a lot of PvE and PvP in this game. There is currently regular content updates, a little bit less on the expansion, but a ton of seasonal events. So there's always something going on in Star Wars: The Republic. Additionally, the game is free to play. So you can jump in for free, but there are a lot of traps to buy and subscribe and get the crates and so on. And SWTOR, just like other free to play models, basically makes a problem and then sells you a solution. So while you can play free to play, it is just cumbersome, time consuming, and painful if you really start to make progress towards the end game. But for players who just want to jump in and do the story, going free to play is not bad whatsoever. One of the downsides of Star Wars: The Republic really is the combat. It's a bit outdated. It reminds me of a less intuitive World of Warcraft style. So it's going to be tab target, slow cooldowns, and a bit slower. I still like the combat style and think it's classic, but other players may be turned off, especially if you like action-oriented combat, like New World or Elder Scrolls Online and Guild Wars. But if you're going to pick up Star Wars: The Republic, you're probably going to play it because you're a Star Wars fan and you're really looking for some game to give you more of that story. Especially with the Old Republic era, there's tons of books with Darth Malgus and featuring him in the game. It's absolutely incredible if you're a geek like me and love Star Wars expanded universe story. Tons of voice acted dialogue, branching storylines, and you get to make decisions, which is kind of unique in MMORPGs because it actually impacts the story and what you feel about your character. And the community is really emphasized on helping new players. It's much smaller than other games, but it's very helpful and casual. As of December 2024, SWTOR maintained a substantial player base. So the game's estimated to have about 12 to 13 million players that have totally played it, with around 16,000 daily active users. It's hard to gauge this because people are spread out with the game's launcher along with Steam. So these numbers aren't exactly 100% accurate. But on Steam, SWTOR's peak was 34,000 concurrent players, with recent numbers indicating a daily player base around 5,700 online. The most recent expansion for SWTOR is the Legacy of the Sith, released February 15th of 2022. It's going to be this huge, awesome, big, sprawling battle between the Galactic Republic and the Sith Empire, particularly emphasizing Sith Lord Darth Malgus. So again, combine the books with the expanded universe and all the story and dialogue in the game. It is a nerd's dream if you love Star Wars: The Republic. However, if you're playing MMOs and you love really robust populations and you love a lot going on in the game and tons of people to play with and cross-platform and updated graphics, this game just isn't going to be for you. But if you're looking for something to jump into with some story, it's free to play, and you're not going to have a huge investment in the game, look to pick up Star Wars: The Republic and just complete the main storyline. It's worth it. Next up is number 9. That's Guild Wars 2. This game was released August 28, 2012 by ArenaNet. The game deviates from traditional MMOs by focusing on dynamic events rather than standard questing, but it has plenty of standard questing and fetch quests quest as well. And it's action oriented, so you can bar swap. You have a set number of skills on your bar, which is quite different from classic MMOs like World of Warcraft, where you might have 30, 40 skills and they're on 30-minute cooldown, some on 2 minutes, and you can pick one of a gazillion different skills. No, this is set, you bar swap, it's very action oriented. It's also going to have a flexible class system, which is similar to New World and Elder Scrolls Online, more about that later. And after a decade on the market, Guild Wars 2 remains a significant presence in the MMO space, but also has a lower population than some others on this list. And there has been rumors that Guild Wars 3 is in development. Those haven't been substantiated by the developer, but speculated from inside sources. And I'm not no journalist. One of the main drawing points or selling points of the game is obviously it's action-oriented combat, but PvP. It is really competitive. It has great structure PvP modes and decent balance in the MMO space. Yes, there's meta and game-breaking things, but you can jump in pretty early, and if you have the skill and the ability, you can dominate PvP without spending hundreds of hours farming gear. And there's regular updates and expansions to ensure the game remains fresh, and since it's been around since 2012, there is a gazillion things to do. And another main benefit is it lacks a subscription fee. So this is one of the most cheap and affordable MMOs to jump into. Another great thing about it is it has a lot of catch-up mechanics. So you can get up to endgame, get up to speed really quick, and start enjoying this game and jump in without spending tons and tons of money. Guild Wars 2, like all MMOs, has some downsides. So one of the complaints is it's grindy, specifically the progression system to get to the highest level endgame gear or completing certain achievements and or mounts and cool collectibles. That's every MMO because the developers have to keep you playing, so take that for what it's worth. Also, since it's 2012, you can imagine the graphics are a bit dated in comparison to modern MMORPGs. However, the top two MMORPGs have very dated graphics as well, so most people are not playing MMORPGs for graphics. And it's going to be a little bit different gameplay without the holy trinity of tanks, healers, and DPS, so players can equip different skills and weapons and really play whatever they want and quickly respec, which is also a benefit if you don't like being locked into one specific role. The game has a lot of dynamic world events as well, so ensuring some of the gameplay remains fresh even if you do it a few times. Regarding the game's population, a bit hard to get a clear indication of Guild Wars 2, but it's estimated around approximately 20 million players have played this game, with active daily users around 87,000 to 170,000, but this is really hard to pin down. Guild Wars 2 has been on Steam since August of 2022. Its all-time peak is 8,000 and the current numbers are around 3,700, but most players are not using the launcher in Steam and using the Arena Lit launcher, so these are not necessarily accurate. Guild Wars 2 had a recent expansion with a lot more story and new raid encounters. So don't think of Guild Wars 2 as just a PvP game. They constantly invest in the PvE in this game as well, and it is very substantial and good, complex, good mechanics, and fun action-oriented combat. So the main appeal of Guild Wars 2 is similar to SWTOR and Elder Scrolls Online, with a bit emphasis on PvP. You have tons of modes, a lot of content, established community, and something else that I really like is flashing mounts. You have a lot of cool collectibles that can even rival World of Warcraft that you can earn and not have to dump gazillion dollars into to make your character look cool. So if you have time and you're willing to go track down these achievements and get some of this cool stuff, you can get it without spending tons of money. However, the combat graphics are a bit outdated, might be off-putting to some people as it was in 2012 it released, but I love the action-oriented combat myself and I love PvP-focused MMORPGs. So this is cheap, easy, fun to jump in and catch up if you like PvP games. Next up is Lost Ark. It's an ARPG, so the combat's going to be different, as well as the interface kind of putting you in an isometric camera above the player like Diablo or Path of Exile. It's going to have a massive world spanning continents and islands and seas, and it's going to have really fast-paced combat, and the cinematic storytelling is impressive. So something about this game, it was originally released in South Korea in 2019, then it launched in the US in February of 2022 via Amazon Games. So it took nearly 3 years to hit the global market, and when it dropped, Lost Ark was one of the highest player counts of any game all time, reaching 1.3 million on Steam. Now, some people will troll the game and say they're all bots, but I disagree. I mean, a lot of my buddies and myself included were all playing this game, and it was huge on YouTube, Twitch, everywhere. The graphics, the gameplay, the cinematic story were the main appeal, and unlike other MMORPGs with a couple years under its belt in Korea, its launch was a lot more polished than others. And the combat system was really fun and unique and different since it was an ARPG in an MMO skin. It combined cool combat mechanics, stunning visuals, and a lot of customization. And it was very challenging. The endgame activities like guardian raids and abyssal dungeons were very, very difficult. But the downside for me was you were locked into the main story. You had to do the main story to get to the end game stuff, which included riding around this stupid banana boat, going from island to island to island, doing quests that I had really no interest doing just so I could get to the guardian raids and the abyssal dungeons and do the content I wanted. And specifically when it launched, you were doing the same basic 3 activities over, and over. There really wasn't a robust end game when it originally launched, and there wasn't even competitive PvP outside of a few little arenas. So while it did have 3 years under its belt, it was a challenge to reach endgame and took you many hours due to this sailing mechanic and locking into having to complete the main story. And when you got there, it was very repetitive. And it took Lost Ark a few years to get that end game fleshed out to have a lot more systems. And despite that, it's only PC only, with other MMOs on this list having crossplay. Crossplay and population is just vital to keep these MMOs alive, because after all, it's all about having other people. Otherwise, you just play RPGs, right? So the more people connected, the better these MMOs are. And the last negative about the game is the free-to-play model was atrocious. This was heavily monetized, making tons of problems for you and then selling you the solution via rolling randomly on your gear to upgrade it. So after a while, you got frustrated rolling over and over and over just to have it fail and possibly destroy some of your gear and wasting your time. So what do? Open up your credit card, drop $1,000, and boom, you have really high-speed updated gear. But for some people, they won't even bat an eye at this, or it's not even a big deal because it seems to be more in every game, and it has a lot to explore and do. If you like the island hopping and the quest and the challenges and collecting things, you're going to have a lot of that. Plus, it's a lot of skill to be really good at this game, and it's very different since it's an ARPG all about positioning and timing. Now, Lost Ark had a massive launch at 1.3 million concurrent players on Steam, and its current daily player count right around 30,000 on Steam. So it has a really robust PC community that still plays the game, and it's holding on to those players years into it. The reason I personally stopped playing Lost Ark was because of the monetization and the grind, and once I reached endgame, I realized it would just be too frustrating and too many hours to sit and play to be competitive, especially doing the island hopping. Big turnoff for me. But if you like exploring and you want an ARPG, MMORPG that has really good PvP system, flashy graphics, and fun combat, this is for you. Next up is number 7, and that's Throne in Liberty. It's a free-to-play MMORPG. We know what that means. That launched on October 1st, and it peaked about 300,000 players on Steam. And yes, I did a little video about this game recently, Is It Dead, and gave my opinion on some of the problems with the game. Yes, I ranked it 7. The reason I did is it has great graphics, it has a lot to explore and do, and it's very PvP focused. It's very similar to Lost Ark in terms of like monetization and overall feel, but the combat and emphasis on PvP are a bit different, especially in the open world. So what this game does is it's going to have weapon-based class system, very similar to New World. So your weapons determine your class, aka your skills, and how you use them. Thus, you can swap them out, but you'll have to kind of start over and grind something. It's going to have something similar to Lost Ark, and you have to roll on skills and weapons and have this RNG chance to upgrade them. And it's going to have the same goofy monetization practices as well, which is a big turnoff, including that you can buy items from players directly from the cash shop. But it does have a lot of flexible classes. You can swap weapons out. It's going to have dynamic combat. And that's kind of the downside of this game, in my opinion, is the combat is twofold. You can play action-oriented or tab target. And I think the game needed to pick one specifically versus trying to do both at the same time. Because if you want a game that's going to be dodging, blocking, sprinting, jumping, doing that, you really need to commit to it. And if you want the World of Warcraft tab target, slow, methodical gameplay, there's a lot of skill in that as well, but blending them together just feels clunky. The world and visuals, along with the mounts, which make you transform into these animals, is absolutely amazing. The game's color palette and world, spectacular. It's just an absolute beautiful game. And it has great story, cinematics, cutscenes, great questing for the main story, and very similar to Lost Ark, you need to complete the main story to finally reach endgame, which is annoying in comparison to other MMOs that let you just do what you want. And the guild v guild territory PvP are the strengths and or weaknesses of this game overall. If you love being in a sweaty guild that dominates people on the server, you're going to love this game. If you're a lamb playing solo and just doing some quests or playing with a couple friends, you're really not going to experience the full force of this game and what it has to offer. So it's really focused on hardcore PvP and people that are coordinated. Someone like me who wants to jump into MMOs MMOs and have more of a casual gameplay experience and just hit queue finders versus having 12 people on deck that I can play with at all times in Discord, you're really going to be turned off of this game. So like I said, population-wise, it had 300,000 people on Steam, and its current player base is 55,000 concurrent players as of December. So that's a strong player base. I think this game personally will fade out over the course of a couple years, but right now it's a decent alternative to Lost Ark if you want more of a traditional MMORPG and an Eastern vibe. And lastly, it's cross-platform, PC, PlayStation, Xbox, and that's really good for that population to maintain and hold into 2025. Next up is number 6, and that's New World Eternum. So New World Eternum is Amazon's newest iteration, this infamous MMORPG. So Eternum's going to combine all the updates, expansions, and new content. And it's going to introduce crossplay, which I've talked about a lot. PC, PlayStation, and Xbox, so they can all visit this world together. And New World, along with Thrones of Liberty, have a lot in common. So New World is going to have a weapon-based class system. So you're going to have weapons and a couple skills that you can use with those individual weapons and have all sorts of combinations. And this game too is really focused on PvP in that guild, centered on really having large-scale battles where your guild can take control of territory, be competitive, and really change the overall environment. But for someone like me who's more of a solo or a casual co-op player, this is a big turn-off because a lot of these events were time-gated. Like, hey, you have to be online at 6 to 8 o'clock on a Friday. Not that I have a life where I'm doing anything interesting on a Friday, besides sitting around recording YouTube videos in my jammies. But if I did have a life, this would be a big turn-off. I just don't like being told by the game when I can play and when I can do the content. Now, what I loved about New World is that the environment was malleable. Like everywhere you look, you can do something with it. You can chop down a tree, you can harvest some stone, you can do whatever. And you're going to be spending a lot of time, in fact, doing that. So it's not necessarily a survival game, but it has elements where it makes the world feel a lot more alive than just harvesting the same 3 plants or something like that in Thrones of Liberty. And it has similar vibes in terms of PvP, but I like the combat a lot better. It's more snappy, it's pivoted and focused just on action-oriented combat, and the graphics are amazing. They're a bit more gritty and realistic than Throne of Liberty, but it looks, feels, and plays awesome currently. Now, as far as getting an accurate population, it's a bit hard with Steam charts, so they don't accurately reflect the entire player base. But from what I'm told with my friends, a lot of console players switch from their other MMOs to New World currently because it has a lot of emphasis on PvP and that organic world that you can just farm and harvest and dominate. So with cross-platform being introduced, great graphics, cool action-oriented combat, this is a great game to check out in 2025. Next up is number 5, Elder Scrolls Online, and what I dedicated a lot of my years covering content for, one that's near and dear to my heart. It's set in Tamriel's vast and lore-rich world. So it's developed by ZeniMax Online Studios and published by Bethesda Softworks. It launched in April of 2014 and has been one of the staples, with recently celebrating 10 years. So ESO is going to blend solo-friendly storytelling with a lot of large-scale multiplayer experiences. It's going to have a massive amount of quests that are fully dialogue. It's not going to have a whole lot of cutscenes like other games, but it's going to have what you probably want out of an Elder Scrolls game, which is tons of lore, cool characters, and a lot of exploration. It's not going to capture the Skyrim exploration that players like, but it will capture a lot of details and interesting gameplay and a lot better combat, in my opinion, in comparison to Skyrim. You're going to have classes, 7, and it's not going to have the same thing that New World has, which is its weapon-based classes. No, you have a specific set of classes, but the classes can pick and choose a gazillion different skills. So you'll have a customized, unique build that can really fit your playstyle. Now, ESO has metas and so on, so these are going to be finely tuned for the biggest and best performance you can possibly have. But it's going to have incredible high-quality voice acting and storytelling, and it's solo-friendly. You can catch up faster than any MMO that I've ever played, and I've done about 30 characters just because I love the main story quest, and it's still fun if you love the Elder Scrolls story. And it has a lot of PvP in it. One of the most interesting features in the game is Cyrodiil. So it's like a 24/7 huge battle royale, massive sprawling environment where you're sieging keeps and taking down other players and factions, and it's 3 factions rather than 2. That's also one of the biggest downsides, is the population has dwindled because the server performance has really lacked over the course of the entire game, and they've never got it right. And 2025, they recently came out with a director's letter saying they're going to continue to try to fix the server, but they're going to stop on the quarterly content cycle along with the massive expansion. Now, this is my interpretation, not fact, but that seems to indicate they're going to slow down some of the content and cadence and really draw back Elder Scrolls Online, and I can understand why. There is tons of zones in this game, a gazillion hours of story, a bazillion collectibles that you can do, dungeons, trials, which is the large-scale PvE. They have a lot of instance-based content, and something I've mentioned before is it's queue-based, so you can hit a couple buttons at your level 10 2 hours into the game and really find other players to play with versus like shouting in zone or something. But along that same line, it doesn't have crossplay. It never committed and never got off of having these mega servers, which are really interesting and good because you don't have to go from server to server. If your server crashes or dies, there's no one to play with. So on PC and North America, it's one server, all players, but it's not connected with PCU or Xbox or whatever. So you have a lot of pockets of players with very little interaction between the communities, and a lot of players just transfer from console to PC because the performance is better. Now, as of December 2024, Steam charts indicate approximately 10,000 concurrent players on Steam. So this is not going to be a robust, massive population of players, but it maintains that same 10,000 or so to log in every single day. So if you're looking for more Elder Scrolls story and you want something super solo friendly, something you can catch up, it has a little bit of PvE, a little bit of PvP, it really allows you to just do whatever you want. This is the best game on the market, and it is action oriented. So if you like the World of Warcraft tab target, you will be turned off by this game. Moving on to number 4, and that's Once Human. So this recently came out. It's a free-to-play multiplayer open world survival MMO set in a post-apocalyptic world. So you are a meta human, a player that's going to gain ability to fight big monsters, build territories, and uncover some truth about this alien plague throughout the world. So it's going to have survival mechanics, meaning you're going to have to manage resources, build stuff, go harvest stuff, upgrade weapons, blueprints, perks, PvE, and PvP. The standout feature is its seasonal design, when the game world resets every few weeks, introducing new challenges and environments. So this might be cumbersome for some people, but it's going to keep the game fresh and alive and always have the cycle or always something to look forward to in an MMO. Because after you build up and get to a certain point, MMO players, we want progression. And the moment we're not feeling like we're making progress towards something, usually it's our player power level, or it might be customization and collectibles, it's time to move on from the game. So this is going to keep that fresh. You're going to have tons of weapon customization, massive base building, and it's just going to be a struggle to survive. So if you love the survival genre, but you're looking for an MMO you can play with friends, with or against other players, this is going to be for you. You're going to have contaminated food and water to deal with. Think about like Fallout 4 on survival mode if you ever played that. It's kind of annoying, but it kind of gets you in this survival, man, what if this really happened vibe. So if you enjoy games like Rust, DayZ, or Ark Survival Evolved, you will probably like this game. Crafting, base building, dynamic weather, and sometimes a pain in the butt PvE or PvP experience. Moving on to number 3, and that is Old School Runescape. This is a nostalgic MMORPG, and it's on PC, iOS, and Android, so that means it's very accessible. And while the graphics are probably the worst on this list, and it is dated, people just love it and still play. It has combat, questing, crafting, and trading, and it's nostalgic. You know what I mean? If you started MMOs, probably not 900 years old like me and did Ultima Online, back when me and Moses were playing video games, most players were entry into MMO was this. So Old School RuneScape is still surviving thanks to community-driven updates and that passionate player base that loves the game. And it has a lot of hardcore PvP as well, and engaging in complex boss fights. And it's very similar to what I experienced in Ultima Online. When you're roaming out in the wilderness, it's sweaty. So it's high stakes, you know what I mean? If you get nuked by some sweat lord that no life's the game, you are going to be triggered, you're going to lose some stuff, and it's not going to be well. But that's what makes it fun. When you're roaming out there on your own, solo YOLO, your heart rate's going to go because you do not want to die. But if you are one of those players that gets farmed like a little lamb, this game ain't going to be for you. And it's cross-platform, so PC and mobile, tons and tons of players to go together. And you're going to be playing this game basically for the nostalgia, not for the graphics and the mechanics. It's going to be super heavy grind focused. Now, a lot of people hate grinding. I don't know why, but I'm kind of one of those meatheads that likes it. I just like going in laps and killing zombies and grinding. It's just kind of fun for me. Turn on a podcast, listen to some music, talking to someone in Discord. So if you don't like that repetitive gameplay over and over and over to level up your skills or earn currency, definitely stay away from this game. So Old School RuneScape achieved an all-time player peak of 200,000 concurrent players in November of 2023. And on Steam, it still has a player base of 6,000 concurrent players, recorded in February of 2021. But this doesn't factor in the iOS and the Android players, so you're going to have a lot more running around. It's not exactly exactly accurate. But this game's worth checking out for nostalgia, and if you just want something you can pop up and play on your phone. 2025, they're going to have a lot of content going forward with it, so new raids, new skills, quality of life improvements, so it's still just worth fun playing if you like that nostalgia vibe. Next up is a quick honorable mention, and that's EVE Online. So EVE Online is like ridiculous hardcore. It's one of the longest running MMOs on PC only, and it's going to be these ships. So it's like player-driven economy, player-driven combat, and groups are going to come together and form organizations and spend a gazillion hours trying to conquer wealth, smuggle goods, and so forth. I knew a guy who basically his full job was to run a guild. People donated him money, and he made a lot of money per year with basically just running a guild. So players had enough money in real life that they could dedicate and put a lot of money towards this because they love this game so much. This game is not going to be for the faint-hearted. It's going to have a ridiculous high learning curve. It's going to have player-driven economy and politics, and if you lose out on something, it's going to be a significant loss. One of the most complex games in MMO history. But what's attractive to this game is that it is really player-driven. You have tons of freedom, and you're really emphasize working with other players. You just can't solo YOLO this. So if you're looking for something ultra hardcore and it's a ship space battle type thing, this game's for you. Okay, now we got between 1 and 2, and I think it's pretty obvious what we're going to do here. So number 2 is Final Fantasy XIV, and this is the #1 competitor to World of Warcraft. It's going to basically mirror World of Warcraft in a lot of different aspects. Number 1, it's going to have fantastic storytelling, and it's going to have really focused end game raiding. It's a PvE game with hardcore mechanics. It's really designed for that hardcore guild, large-scale group PvE. It's going to have a huge world, tons of quests, vibrant regions that look different, and a humongous map. This game relaunched in 2013, so it's overcome a lot of hurdles and now has over 24 million registered players. This is going to have a huge population. It's also available on PC, PlayStation 4 and 5, Mac, Xbox, and it has cross-play platform. So it's going to have a massive, robust, and active community. And at its core, it's a theme park MMO. So this is not going to be survival. It's not going to be, kind of willy-nilly player control doing what you want. It's going to be a theme park, meaning you go from raid to story quest to this to that, and it's all driven by developers that make this content for you. It's going to have flexible job systems. You can switch between classes, damage dealer, healer, or tank just by changing some weapons. And there's not necessarily build. It's all about gameplay in this game. And the gear is pretty simple. It just goes in a linear fashion. So it's not complex on that. The complexity and the skill comes from the PvE encounters and knowing your rotation, locking in your timing and your positioning while you're managing a bunch of cooldowns. It's going to have that traditional tab target feel. So it's really catered to a few folks. It's catered to hardcore PvE players that want to do the most challenging content in the game. It's catered toward people that love Final Fantasy story. I'm one of them, Deltia from Final Fantasy Tactics. It's just misspelled because I have dyslexia. Don't make fun of me in the comments. And it's also catered to the fashion people. They love dressing up and getting all the collectibles and decorating their character and making them look cool and so on. One of the highlights of the game and/or things I don't like personally is that you have to go through the main story and you have to do a gazillion, bazillion, trillion hours to get caught up. So similar to Lost Ark and some of these Eastern MMORPGs, it's not going to be like Elder Scrolls Online. You start and you can kind of just do whatever you want. You're really going to have to dive deep into that main story quest to get to their progression and hit that end game. But you're going to have really cool, impactful narrative arcs and story, cinematic cutscenes, and the characters are well developed. So if you like story and MMORPGs that are emphasis on PvE, not PvP, this is it. So the player count has about 22,000 active players on Steam, but remember it's cross-platform with a lot of other players and has over 30 million registered on all platforms. So this has a massive player base. There are tons of people always playing. They're always coming out with content and expansions. The graphics and combat are a bit outdated for me personally, but if you love these JRPGs just in an MMO form, you got to try Final Fantasy. Next up is Mr. Captain Obvious, World of Warcraft. It's the undisputed giant of MMORPGs. Can you tell I'm excited? Me personally, not a fan of this game, but it is the quintessential RPG that launched in 2004. It has reportedly peaked at 10 million concurrent subscribers and 100 million accounts created by 2014. It is the most successful, biggest, robust, massive MMO, and that's really what makes this game great. Yes, the population has declined and split into kind of two different games, kind of an old school school version and the current version, but it just has so much to do. I'm talking everything in every other MMO. They almost always rip off World of Warcraft and try to just change it a little bit different so they can get away with it. But take almost every other MMO on the marketplace, whatever is unique about them, World of Warcraft probably has it. So it has a gazillion active subscribers currently, huge development cycle, and unlike almost any other MMO on this list, World of Warcraft blends the best of PvP and PvE. It has competitive, it has casual, it has mediocre, it has just so many things you can do. Solo, group, large scale, you name it. There is something for you. It has roleplay, it has dress up, it has exploration, it has questing, it has hardcore, it has softcore. Oh, maybe not that. Thinking about something else. Don't leave me a comment. But in all seriousness, this is the Giga Juggernaut super polished MMORPG. The two things I cannot stand about the game, make that three. One, the graphics are ridiculous outdated. It looks like I'm playing Mario 64, and I really can't get over that. When I go play it, it's just not appealing to look at. Number two, I am not a fan of the tab target system. It has 50 skills that you can use. Some of them are very long cooldowns. But I do have to admit that there is a lot of skill in managing all those cooldowns, keeping your eyes looking, and just managing what you have to do next in this very complex skill system. And the third is, it is very unforgiving if you're a new player. So most players have invested in World of Warcraft since 2004, so they have characters, they have accounts. This is not something new for them to invest in. If you are a new player and you jump in, you need to start at level 1. Don't be an idiot stick and buy the character at max level. Because what you're going to do is you're going to have a bunch of skills, a bunch of systems, and you're not going to know how to interact with them at all. It is unforgiving for a new player. I think most of you watching this video know the appeal of World of Warcraft. It's just a titan of MMOs. It has every single thing and aspect that you could want from another MMO. It's just a bit dated graphics and a bit dated combat for me, but it has a future. It has a massive population. It has nostalgia. It essentially has every single thing that every other MMO has with more players. And that's why we rank World of Warcraft #1. Well, gang, that's a long-winded video about MMORPGs. I hope you got something out of this, and maybe you could try one that wasn't on your radar based on what I said here. And if you got something out of it, do me a big favor, hit that thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching.